Everyone, and welcome to the Equal Opportunity Committee's 5th meeting of 2013. Can I remind everyone to switch off their mobile phones or set them to flight mode? Agenda item 2 this morning is on the establishment of a subcommittee on policing. We have received a letter from the Justice Committee explaining the reasons behind setting up the subcommittee on policing and inviting us to comment and potentially put forward someone to be a member of the committee. I have spoken to Christine Graham about this subcommittee, and I would quite like to be put forward to go on to that committee if the committee agrees to that. John.
I can see this is coming from the Justice Committee and therefore they're focused on the police. However, it struck me that surely the fire is relevant in this as well. And particularly for our committee, I mean, I think the police have been slightly better at integrating men and women into the force, whereas I think the fire have generally failed, in comparison at least, so where there are very few women. So I actually was wondering if is there no mechanism that could be used that both be reviewed?
I'm not altogether sure. I mean, the reasoning behind this is because of the changes to the police service, and they will have no overview of the fire service. I don't altogether agree with your summing up of integration in the police force.
Well, I was trying to make a comparative point rather than saying yes.
But I think taking the single police force forward, it is very important that we have a view on equality and a number of other things. So I think it is an important committee. Yeah. John, and then Marco.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of discussion about this at the Justice Committee, and I should declare I am a member of the Justice Committee. I think recent events have shown more than ever the compelling need for parliamentary scrutiny of the existing situation and some unfortunate events. However, I do notice that the letter from the convener says that they are we're not asking at this stage for you to nominate a particular member.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, I spoke to Christine Graham, and we were to have the response in by tomorrow, and I did express an interest in going on to the committee. We can certainly, if the committee agree, we can write back and say that we will be nominating someone and do that nomination later, or we can nominate someone at this time if we choose. John.
The reason I mentioned that is wearing another hat. The Parliamentary Bureau has to be involved, and if there is to be representation, and I've no issues about yourself, I think it may be worth trying to establish what they're going to say first. Because certainly, not that I'm a spokesperson for any group, but the independent Green members would be anticipating having membership on that.
As far as I am aware, the political makeup of the subcommittee has already been decided. So, and I am also aware that people from other committees have been suggested for the subcommittee, and the remaining person to go on, or the person from this committee, would be a Labour member.
Well, that being the case, I'm blissfully unaware of all of that. Such are the workings of the Scottish Parliament. If it's to be a Labour member from this committee, then I'd be very content that it was yourself, Convener.
Thank you. Marco.
I would just echo that point, that until such time as we are asked to nominate someone, I don't think we should nominate someone, given that what goes on in these usual channels is always subject to change. The letter here asks us to make a decision in principle and specifically says that we're not asking at this stage for you to nominate a particular member. So I'm perfectly content to agree in principle to nominate a member, and when the formal process of asking us to nominate subsequently happens, that we take that decision then.
That's fine. So are we
in which case, I would draw my previous agreement, agree that principle, and should you require somebody to nominate you later, I'll do it.
Thank you very much, Alex. So we will contact the Justice Committee and say that we would like someone on that committee. We'll send the appropriate letter. Thank you very much for that. I'm now going to briefly suspend the meeting to allow our witnesses to enter. Good morning, everyone. Can I welcome our witnesses that have just joined us? And can I ask, if you have a mobile phone, could you switch it completely off because it affects our microphones? If you don't mind doing that, please. Agenda item 3 this morning is an evidence session on where Gypsy travellers live. And we are joined round the table by members of the Gypsy travelling community and MECOP. And as we're having a round table session, members and witnesses are sitting together around the table. And before we start this morning, I'll explain how this session is going to work. The members and I will have some questions in some areas we would like to explore with you, and we'll ask a question, and anyone who wants to reply or say anything about that, if you catch my eye or raise your hand, we'll make sure that you get in to speak. And I'll try to include everybody, so you may have to wait a little bit, but we will make a note of who wants to speak. We may ask a few questions on one thing and then move on to talk about something else. And a lot of the questions that we'll ask this morning will be about how we can make things better for you. And we'll start to round up this session about 11:20. There are some people at the table this morning that won't be speaking at all, and these are the broadcasting reporter who works the microphones, the committee staff that are on my left, and the official report who will write up everything that's said this morning. You don't need to touch the microphones, they will automatically come on to record what you are saying and for the official report to write it up. And it's good if you could try and just talk one at a time, because if too many people are speaking, it's difficult for official report to pick up what you're saying. And I'd like to start this by getting everybody introduced. And feel free to add anything when you are introducing yourself if you want. If you want to say what site you're from, if you are from a site, or if you live in a house, how long you've been there, anything you think would be useful to the committee when you're doing the introduction. We've visited quite a number of Gypsy travelling sites, so it would be good to know as well what site that you stay on, because we may possibly have already visited your site. Can I also welcome the people at the back of the room, and I hope that you enjoy this session this morning. My name is Mary Fee, and I'm the committee's convener, and I'm now going to ask everyone round the table to introduce themselves, starting with Charlene.
I'm Charlene MacDonald, I'm 27, I came down from Oban, I live on a caravan site in Oban.
Elizabeth Johnson, I'm a traveller, and I've come all the way down from Crieff, Perthshire, a Steiner House, and I'm a volunteer trainer for MECOP.
Good morning, I'm Dennis Robertson, I'm the MSP for Aberdeenshire West.
Morning, I'm Georgia McCann, I'm a Scottish Gypsy traveller. Currently I stay in Forfar in a house, but I've been trying to count up how many council sites I've been on, and I've got to about 7 already. That's just sites. So, there we go.
Good morning, I'm Betty Irvin and I stay in Duddingston Caravan site.
Alec Johnston, Member of the Scottish Parliament, North East Scotland.
Michelle Lloyd, I'm a manager with MECOP.
Edith Townsley and I'm from Dunholligan site in Lochgilphead.
Morning, I'm Siobhan McMahon, MSP for Central Scotland.
Iona Burke and I'm a peer educator for Article 12 in Scotland and I'm from Aberdeen.
My name's John Mason, I'm the newest member of the committee and I'm the MSP for Glasgow Shettleston.
Katrina Stewart, I live in Dalkeith, I've been there for 21 months. Don't like it, but no other choice.
Susan Townsley from a double dyke site in Perth.
Morning, my name's John Finney, MSP for Highlands and Islands.
Christine Ward, Caravan site in Kinross.
Morning, I'm Fiona Townsley, I'm from Double Dykes Caravan site in Perth.
I'm Marco Biaggi, I'm the Member of the Scottish Parliament for Edinburgh Central and the Deputy Convener of the committee.
Morning, Michelle Foy, just recently moved from Dunholligan Caravan site into a house because there was no other alternative.
Thanks very much for that. Committee members do have some questions for you this morning, and I'm going to start with Dennis, who wants to ask you about the relationship between travellers on sites and also the location of sites, and then John Finney, who's going to ask you about overnight stopping places. So we'll start with Dennis.
Thank you, Convener. My question really is around relationships between travellers and other travellers. We've been hearing in evidence, and we certainly heard on Monday when we were in Aberdeen, that the relationship between some of the travelling families is maybe one of the reasons that you don't stop off in certain areas, or that you choose maybe not to live on particular sites. I'm just wondering if you could help us try and understand the relationship between yourselves and maybe other travelling communities. We did hear, for instance, about the Irish travelling and the English travelling and obviously the Scottish travellers. But I'm just wondering if you could maybe help us try and understand the relationship between yourselves and other travellers. Who would like to start? Go on, Georgia, you're never too shy. Georgia, you're never too shy.
Georgia.
You're never too shy, Georgia.
Am I able to comment?
Yes,
because
of course you are.
obviously I'm in a house, but I'm in, like the woman, Michelle. I was forced into a house to get proper medication and health service for my youngest son. But at the end of the day, when I travelled on sites, it's like any community. It doesn't matter who it is. Not everybody gets on. So it's not just because you can't just assume just because you're a traveller that you're going to go on with your neighbour. So it could be anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Basically, that's what it is. It's just
yeah.
Some English like to keep their cell, the Scots like to keep the cell. Do you know what I mean? Irish. Yeah. So that's only my view. Do you know what I mean? It's like any culture. You get good yins and bad yins among any's. So depends.
Yeah. Did that influence you at all, Lizzie, when you were going around various sites as to where you might stay or to move on?
No, because when I moved on a site, I was more than glad of getting a site. Okay. And the site that I was on was out at West Lothian in Bathgate. And it was nae long built, and I was one of the third residents on it. And there were a variety of different mix, Irish and Scotch and English travellers that was on the site. But like I says, for myself personally, I was more than glad because I was sitting at the side of the road.
Okay.
And I was glad of getting into the site, so I wasn't bothered who was on the site.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
Georgia, did you want to come in on
Yeah,
that? Okay, Georgia and then Susan and then Fiona.
I was just going to agree with Lizzie. Where you stay and who you stay beside just depends on your own personality. Who you maybe feel comfortable with, people you've maybe grew up with. You've maybe went to a certain place for a certain reason to stay beside your uncles or your aunties because there's something going on in the family. So I think it comes down to family influences and work to where you go and who you want to stay beside. But like everything else, any culture and any people in the world, not everybody gets on with their neighbours.
So I'm understanding what you're telling me, Georgia, is that sometimes moving to certain sites or moving on is to be closer to families?
Most definitely, yeah.
Most definitely. That's good, thank you.
Susan.
I think it's the same in anyone that lives in a housing scheme or in a site. I mean, there are people, my daughter stays in the house, and there are people there that doesn't get on. So, and there's people in sites that doesn't get on. I mean, everybody can't be in love with everybody else. There's always some kind of rows between them. Even in weir site, I mean, there's still people that doesn't talk to each other in weir site, and that's been for a few years. So, the housing scheme's just the same. The site's just the same. Everybody doesn't get on.
You, Susan, Georgia was saying that sometimes people move to a particular site to be closer to family members. Would that be the same as yourself?
All my family is in housing except me. So, yeah. In the site, they've got cousins in the site, but that's about it. But the rest of my family, like my children, grandchildren, my mother, they're on houses.
Okay, thank you.
Fiona.
I think there's two reasons why some travellers avoid sites. One is some traveller families use a particular site and you didn't want to go in there because you associate that site with them and you believe that that's their pitches, so you didn't want to take up their pitches while they're away. The other reason is antisocial behaviour, but you get that within the travel community and the non-travel community. But I think it all comes down to the management of the sites. If they were managed properly, then there wouldn't be problems with antisocial behaviour. But in some sites it's allowed to go on, just ignored because there's nowhere else to put the travellers.
Anything else you wanted to ask, Dennis?
No, I think that's fine at the moment, Camilla. Thank you.
Can I move on now to John Finney, who wanted to talk about stopping places, and then I'll come to Marco, who wanted to talk about the media. John.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, we've been trying to establish how best we can allow travellers to continue their lifestyle as safely for them as possible. And there's different phrases are used, and the phrase that's been used is transit site, and that means different things to different people. So my question relates to, if travellers are going from one place to another, and they know where they're going, but they can't get there in a day, and they're stopping off somewhere, what facilities should be made available, and where should that be?
I'd like to say so. Until recently, I've travelled all the time, moving from place to place. It's just been the last 21 months I've been settled. And one thing that I think should be done was not get so much hassle. The police can't move you by law. But the authority, if you pull onto a ground, you're no sooner on it, you don't get jacks down, you don't get unhitched, and the police is down harassing you. They don't let you speak, you know what I mean, you're not allowed to say, oh, look, I'm here, I'm just moving, I'm staying the night, as you say, or whatever, to get to another place. They don't want no explanation. Do you know what I mean? And it is a lot of hassle. If they would just listen for once, do you know what I mean? But police don't do that. So if the word is used, it would be better if they would make transit sites and, you know, towns up and down the country instead of official sites. Because travellers, there's a lot of travellers come out in Edinburgh during the summer, all over the travel. And that's why they got a lot of hassle, because they've nowhere to stop permanently. If they made a transit site for people to go maybe 3 or 4 weeks in the summer here and there, the councils or anybody wouldn't get any hassle. Do you know what I mean? They keep saying they've got these big bills for clearing up rubbish, and they've got all this other problems. If they made a transit site in towns, they wouldn't have any hassle for travellers. That would be the end of their problems. But you know, it's been a fighting, but I've been fighting this battle for this transit site to be built in Edinburgh for the last 25 years. They don't make enough sites for travellers, I don't think, anywhere. Do you know what I mean?
And the situation you said with the police, is that across the country?
That is across the country. You pull into any piece of ground and the police come down and they'll take names, they'll take your registration, and we all know in this day and age everything's high-tech. They just need to look at your registration to know if you're insured, you're taxed and that. But they still want to see documents for your vehicles. They want to see paperwork for caravans. They ask for names of everybody that's there, including children. It doesn't matter if they're a baby or what age they're. The police want to know. Do you know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing that you've got to put up with.
Can I ask about then the countryside rather than towns? Then, if someone were travelling in the Highlands, for instance, where I am a representative, what should be made available then? Because some of the traditional stopping off spots are blocked off, as you know, with blocks, tree trunks, whatever. What should be made available?
Susan, Georgia, Charlene, Lizzie, Fiona and Christine. Okay. Oh, and Edith, sorry. Yeah, Edith.
Who was it, me? Oh.
Who's first? Susan. We've got a huge big list. Sorry, we'll get to you. Susan.
I think what should be made available is, it used to be there were certain bits in the road that you could actually pull into, and then, as you said, they closed it all off. But if bits gone up the road, they were going to do it from Glasgow a few years ago, when me and Fiona used to do meetings. They were going to do that. They were going to put certain bits in the road where you could pull in maybe for a couple of days, and there was bins there, you could get water. They were going to set up mobile toilets and things. And that never came to anything. So now they're just pulling into, like, behind shopping centres, car parks, is all getting it, because they're actually nowhere for them to pull in on the road up. So they need actual stopping places that's maybe tarmacked off, where the caravans can go into, and then the bins uplifted, things like that, and they right up the road, right around Scotland. I think that should be no into the sites, just out of the, no in the towns, but out of the sites.
I've got Georgia and then Charlene, but just before I bring you in, Georgia, can I just ask, as we're talking about stopping sites, what size do you think those stopping sites should be?
I mean, how long's a piece of string? It would depend on who was using them. It would depend on what kind of quality they were, where they were. Travellers move for a various amount of reasons. Some could be health, some could be family, some could be schooling, some could be basically because they've came from England and they want to be in Scotland. There's so many different reasons. So, I mean, the size would have to accommodate certainly minimum, maybe 10, and then forward from there. But as in, to me personally, I think roadside camps, traditional roadside stopping places should be reopened so that we can move where our generations have been, where our families have. So I can take my children and say, this is where your grandfather stayed. This is where I stayed as a child. Now, my young daughter's just got married and it's like I've lost a limb because she's not at home now. If I was in my caravan and we were roadside camps, my daughter would still be at home and I'd still be able to look after her. But she's not, because I'm in a house and unfortunately the council won't allow these people to stay, these people to stay. So the restrictions is there.
Charlene and then Lizzie.
I was just going to pick up on what Susan had said about roadside camps. I think a regular collection of rubbish, I think I've stayed in camps where there has been toilets placed there for travellers because it's regular camps that travellers use, and like even the locals run about the camps that I'm talking about know, oh, travellers come here in the summer, you know, and toilets have been placed there for them, bins collected once a week, you know, and I think that makes a big difference. And like Georgia was saying, no, I really do think camps should be opened back up. I don't think, my honest opinion, transit sites, I don't agree, but everybody to their own. I think roadside camps to be opened back up for younger, definitely.
Okay, thanks for that. Lizzie and then Christine.
My comment, first of all, Mary, for your course for the transit sites. I know maybe travellers think because I've had so many years in a house, but I stay in a small village up in Perth and Kinross, and there's a main lay-by that's been used every year. Travellers move into it, stay for a few weeks, move off it. The police doesn't look, you know what I mean? They didn't bother, they didn't get hassled or nothing. And even a few women, the lassies, will come up, and because I'm in the village and they'll fill their water cans, I'll fill their cans for them. Because I go out personally myself, and because I work with MECOP on health issues, I go down to see if there's anything the lassies might need. So obviously I tell them if they need water, give them my address, they'll come up with their cans, I'll fill them all up, tell the lassies they can do their washing or whatever. The other point, Mary, as you says about transit sites, the thing that you would have to watch if they come in force is the fact they could be taken over like a site. If the transit sites, you're talking about how big they should be. So if you've got so many different transit sites up and down the country, it would have to be limited so that it's being fair to everybody, so that each person, if they did want a few weeks or a few days or whatever, they'd have to make limitations for them to make sure, well, you're only allowed maybe a fortnight. You'll have to move on after the fortnight, because it would end up like a proper site. And then that's when you would have problems maybe getting everybody off. Something like Vale, that one that happened in England, folk, do you know what I mean? So there would have to be limitations on how big it would be, and how the restrictions and how long you could stay there.
Thanks for that, Lizzie. Christine and then Edith.
I don't think you should do transit sites. I think you should just open up all those camps. Transit sites, I think, would just bring more trouble than it's worth. The old places what we used to stay on, I think, would be a lot better, as long as what they said, like the bins was collected and there was toilets. Because like most of us years ago used to stay in places where there was like Asda's or Tesco's, whatever, where we could go across the toilet or whatever. You can't even do that now. If you go to a garage for water, they tell you you're not allowed water. You're not allowed to do nothing anymore.
Edith and then Iona.
I agree sort of on the non-transit sites in one way, and I agree with Elizabeth on the other issue that if there was transit sites made, that there would have to be a limit on, let's say, a 7-day or a 14-day stop and then move on, because what would probably happen, it would become permanent. You know, people would say, well, it's quite comfortable, I like the area, I'm just going to stay. And then, again, I agree with the camps, because I live in Dunholligan and I'm sort of one of 9 children, so my family is massive. And I have English nieces, born and raised, Irish nieces and nephews, so I have got Irish, English within my family. And some lives in Ireland, England, and so on. And we do have a holiday caravan park in Lochgilphead, where any non-traveller can come up with a caravan net or a car and trailer, pull on, pay a night, pay 2, and then go on to Oban or such and such. If a traveller comes up, you know, with a distinctive type caravan pickup, they can't get on. So they can't pull in that area to visit the people that is on site. So therefore, you know, they go up into industrial estate, which that's been blocked off. So, and rather maybe, if you've got a large family, I mean, nobody wants to go and sort of take maybe 5 and 6 children into somebody else's home. They've got their own home that's on wheels, they can take it up, have a long visit, go fishing and whatever. But with no old camps, it can't be done. And then you get the, you know, the staying in the car parks and the rubbish left and so on. So I agree with the old roadside camps being reopened and the big bin placed or whatever. Because I've done the same as Elizabeth there. If people's came up in the industrial estate, I've went down and said, look, I live up in the site. Well, I've got a water tap, help yourself. So I agree on sort of both issues, but so, thank you.
Okay, I've got Iona and then Fiona.
I agree with the camps, but there should be normal facilities provided, as in bins and toilets and everything that you need. And I think it's important that you need to involve gypsy travellers in the planning process to make decisions about what's happening and to let us know what's going on, to see their point on things, and so we can make decisions where we want camps, we want sites, whatever, without it going ahead with us. Because Article 12 in Scotland, we've been doing work with planning aid, and with that is helping us a lot as young gypsy travellers to find out our rights on planning permission and everything that we need to go ahead with. And I think more gypsy travellers should be involved in that process.
Okay, thanks, Iona. Fiona.
I feel that we need a range of stopping sites, and I think that stopping sites is not going to work until they look at more permanent small sites for travellers, because young gypsy travellers getting married are going to move into temporary stopping sites and they're not going to leave. So, and the other thing is, I think that we do need toilets, because there's gypsy travellers who are disabled and they move around and they need proper facilities when they're moving around. So I think we need to open up the traditional camping grounds, because some travellers will not stop on sites, not stop on official sites, because they prefer the old-fashioned way of doing things. So I think that we need a range of facilities.
When you say open up the traditional camps and the traditional stopping places, could you explain exactly what you mean by that? Is it just simply a case of taking the signage that's up in lay-bys down so you can stop there overnight, or is it something different that you mean?
It's just stopping somewhere where travellers, it's like Double Dykes was a traditional stopping place, and it's a place where travellers, families through generations will go back to time and time again, because it's where they went as children, it's where their parents went as children, and it's just keeping that going. But a lot of these places have been blocked off where travellers can't go into them now.
But that, can I say, but that lay-by, that it's only about 20 minutes out for the village. And it's quite a big one, because it can add up to maybe about 10, 15 trailers on it. And even the travellers that uses it, obviously you've got the public road users, like the lorries and folk coming in with vans and that. But the police is so used to travellers there. And even when I was speaking, the local policeman that we got, and he said he says it would be strange not to see travellers coming, because he says every year, especially around about the summertime, that you guarantee it's parked. You get a handful in the winter, because it's not ideal, because it is like kind of half a road just before you go onto the motorway. And he says, but every time in the summertime, it's constant parked. And it's just, even though they've got bairns in that, it's like, cause it's wide enough. And like as any traveller here, they could wall look out for rain if there's bairns in that anyway. But it's constantly gets used, and there's no bins or toilets gets used there. You know what I mean? Nothing's provided for them. It's just the lay-by, but they don't get no hassle for the council folk, or they don't get bothered with the police. I suppose the police just maybe go past it just to check how many's there, but it gets regular used, and that has been for years. That one lay-by, it's been into it. And that's mutual lay-by. If anybody's needing just come.
Georgia.
I think in all fairness, to ask where we would like these traditional stopping places to be reopened, I think each council individually would know how many travellers tend to go through their communities on a yearly basis. Now, I know Dundee gets used quite a lot in the summertime, and just next to Dundee Airport seems to be a more common place than others. So maybe they could think about making a roadside camp, but maybe a little bit away from the airport, so it wasn't obstructing anything going on there. But it's obviously a common place that travellers tend to go to. So I think each council individually could answer that question themselves.
Yes, Dennis.
Thank you, Convener. It's really enough point that Fiona made, because Fiona was suggesting that, stopovers are fine, but we need more permanent sites. I'm just wondering, with regard to the permanent sites, and I think there's an acknowledgement that there's too few, how close would you want permanent sites to be to the towns and villages, cities? Because we've heard it, from different people, very different stories. Some people are saying it should be just outside the community, maybe a mile or 2 miles. Some people are saying it should be much more inside and integrated into the community. I mean, apart from the number of more permanent sites, where do you think they should be located? How close to the communities should they be?
Well, I stay in Double Dykes, and a caravan site is just outside Perth, and I think that that's an ideal place to situate a caravan site. I think if you're too close into the town, then the council put a public path they opened up a traditional public path next to Double Dykes caravan site, and for the first few years we were suffering a lot of harassment and abuse and shouting from the path. So I think if you're too close into the town, then that can be a problem. But if you're just outside the town, you're close enough to facilities, but just that bit back where you didn't get too much harassment. Does that help with your own privacy as well? I mean, you probably value your own privacy as well? Yes. So does that help with that? Yeah. That's good, thank you.
No.
It should be close enough for facilities, as in shops, doctors, schools, things that you need, but not too close. Just enough for your own privacy, but not putting us away out into back roads or up into woods and away from everything. It should be close enough so you've got what you need, but not right in.
Schooling. Because the other thing we heard, Iona, was that from families is that a lot of travelling people, obviously, when they're travelling, they like to come back to an area they can call their home as well.
Yeah.
So you've got a permanent place to come back to. So you're on the road, but you'd like to come back to a permanent place, which you can call your home. And obviously for children going to school and what have you, that's very important. And medical care, again, I think you've alluded to that, Elizabeth. It's really important to have medical care so you can access that. Do you think that that's a sensible approach to have it just outside a town perimeter so you've got access to all these things? For those reasons?
As it's close enough to think you're not put miles away out.
No.
Close enough for things that you need, as in doctors and schools and everything. But all the sites you see, they're all put out in back roads. They're all into woods and away from everything, blocked away. So they should be close enough for everything you need and put it in public, not hided away.
And what do you think about the idea of gypsy travelling people buying their own sites? It's been suggested that some people, maybe the families could come together and find a plot of land and actually buy that piece of land?
Well, we've had problems with that ourselves because we stay in a bit of land in Aberdeen, and that's where the planning permission comes into it, where I think gypsy travellers should be involved a lot more so they know their rights. Because when we were going about getting that, it was torture. They thought you didn't know what you were speaking about. They were right, you were wrong. So when you know your rights, you can say, well, no, this is what's going to happen, to get things sorted, to get a place to call your home, to come back to it. So that's where the planning aid comes in again. I think we should have the right to know our rights to go about getting planning permission and stuff.
Thank you.
Edith, Lizzie and then Betty wanted to come in on that. Edith.
Yeah, can I just come in on the, sort of like as the girl was saying, the distance and about the sites being hidden away. I'm from Dunholligan and we're about 2.5 miles out of town. And there's no foot pavement, there's no street lighting, and there's not even a bus stop at the bottom of the road. Okay if somebody drives, but our site has been full this last year and there've been quite a few people that doesn't drive with children, and the footpath is totally unsuitable. I've even took pictures and gave it to the local councils and stuff, and it's up in the wood and it can't be seen, and there's people that's been born and raised in Lochgilphead and can actually say, oh, I've heard of Dunholligan but I don't know where it is. So there's people from the town that doesn't even know it's there, and to try and get something done, it's just, sometimes it seems impossible, you know. I mean, I've got teenage daughters, and if they want to go down the town, there's no bus to go. So they've got to put wellies on and strudge through the...
Now, that was one of the sites that I visited.
You know,
and
there's absolutely no quick, easy way to get... I mean, 2.5 miles an easy walk for anybody, well, unless it's not raining or snowing. But it's the conditions in which they have to endure to get there, you know. Okay. And there's no indication, there's no filter lane. The road up to it is appalling. I mean, most people, even the councillors with their nice cars, doesn't like coming up it. You know.
Thanks for that. I've got Lizzie and then Betty.
Well, the site that I was on, that I was forced, well, I wasn't forced off it, but like I say, the circumstances, I had to move into a house, which I hate every day, even though I'm into it. But the fact is, a lot of the sites that the lassies is saying, because where they get built and the locations with them, because they're so far out and they're not got the right facilities that the travellers need into them. Like Edith says, not everybody can drive. But the thing is, that's why people don't use them. So when the site I was on, it was catered for about 25 pitches on it, which is quite a big site for travellers. So, but it was just like very last necessary to end up. The site was just abandoned because it was so out of the way. Nobody wasn't suitable for people that couldn't, if they were like, if you did have a disability or anything like that, even for a doctor to visit on the site or midwives or whatever, it was hard for them to even find the location at. And so the site, it's a waste of resources and money building the sites. And like wee lassie said, Iona was talking about, it should get more travellers' input and we're saying where the sites get built and how big they are and things like that. Travellers have to get more permission and more say on how on the sites. But
so if there's new sites being created, we need the involvement.
We need, to get the travellers involved in where they are. And a lot of them, the sites, it's like places that you wouldn't put human beings. The site I was on, it was actually built on top of, well, assuming, we don't know the 100% facts, but it was meant to assume that it was built on top of a graveyard. The site, I know my sister's site in Dalkeith, that's surrounded with pylons. And there were a lot of complaints about people suffering ill health because of it. And the other sites next to rivers, burns, on top of rubbish tips and all that. So, excuse me, for any settling persons as this room, you're not going to buy a house if it's next to something like that. Do you know what I mean? You want a nice view, you want to have nice place and that. Well, why stick travellers into these places with unknown recognition for it? Do you know what I mean? So,
thank you. Thanks. I've got Betty and then Michelle and then Charlene, I'll bring you in.
I just wanted to say there's a site in the Borders in Leiden, and it's a tourist site, and I thought it was really a good idea what they done. They stopped letting travellers on for a while, and then the council decided to give part of the site, you know, the part of the site for travellers, and it works out really well. What they've got to do is they've got to book maybe a month ahead, and they're only allowed for 6 weeks, and I think it's got something like 10 pitches on it, because my brothers were on it in the summertime, and although there's like tourists and they're on the same site, they just sort of keep to their own bits, and I think that worked out really well. It's a private owned site, but it's no travellers that own it, but they got money for the council to build part of it just for travellers.
So do you think that's an option that could be expanded
Yes,
in other areas?
I really do.
Michelle and then Charlene.
Can I just pick up off of Lizzie? In Carlisle, in England, there's been a new site built. It was built about 2 years ago. Now, when they decided to actually build this site and where they were putting the site, the travelling community were well involved. There was a lot of hands-on from the travelling men to work and actually get the site up and running. Now, this site, I've got family on it, there's been people on it from the site's been opened. You know what I mean? I think they should be well involved because it's a communication site where...
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Charlene.
Just picking up as well, but Lizzie said there about having travellers' input on where the sites are built. Me personally, I think it would save the councils an awful lot of money if they sit down and listen to, here's what we need, you know, and they build things, they do things. I've had personal experiences with council that they've put things on costing an awful lot of money, which is a waste of time. What's the point to it? Because it doesn't meet the needs that it's meant to be. And they say, oh, but you did have input on it. And you're like, no, I didn't, you know, and you know that, and they're telling people, we did listen to what the travellers had to say. They had an input in how that was built. And I do think it would save an awful lot of money, an awful lot of hassle as well, if they just got travellers' input on where the sites are built from the start.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, did you want to come in on that?
It's really just a comment on what we're hearing, that there's obviously a need for a range of different options to meet the range of needs within the community. But I think it's really important to remember that what people are saying is no different to any other community. It's not about special treatment or special provision. Within the settled community, within my community, there's private ownership, there's public ownership, there's council houses, there's shared ownership schemes, there's sheltered housing if you've got special needs. What I'm hearing today is people are not asking for anything different than just a variety. Yeah. And also just to pick up on what Michelle said about the site in Carlisle, I heard recently about this example. The organisation are called Home Space, and I believe they are the equivalent of a registered social landlord, but they're also part owned. The company is part owned by Gypsy Travellers, as well as working in partnership with local authorities and the community to provide different kinds of sites. They're very much into sustainable accommodation as well. So it appears that they're really thinking a bit more out of the box and not just producing more of the same, which has been done in Scotland. So I think there are examples of good practice which could be perhaps replicated, shared. You could find out more about them to see if there are options in Scotland.
Thanks for that, Michelle. Did you want to come back in, Dennis? No. Okay. John, did you have a supplementary on that?
Yes, I was kind of on this point. I mean, I'm just wondering then, what do people think why we're not finding suitable sites, and the sites that you're being given are in many cases unsuitable, as has been described? I mean, is it the councils want to do the right thing and then they get pressurised by the local community, the settled community? Because it sounds like, was it Peebles that it's worked, and the council's been more helpful there, but when we went up Aberdeen, it seems that despite everybody says we need more sites, it's just not happening. And I just wonder if anyone's got any ideas how we move that forward. Do you think it's the government needs to tell the councils what to do?
I think previously, before now, it's always been that the people that decide to make these sites has never in fact even met a Gypsy traveller in person. They've never been to a site for even experience or see the living conditions that's there now. And they draw up these plans and they decide, because they're obviously in charge of the final decision, where the site shall go, how the site shall be managed, and what living conditions, if any, will be put on it, such as amenity blocks. Up until now, it has been within the official status that these the people making these decisions have no experience whatsoever about our lifestyle and our culture at all. And also for the council-run sites, when the option came out for council tenants, now we were considered council tenants on these sites because we pay our rent and we pay our council tax. But when it came through, council tenants had the right to buy. We were excluded from that. Why?
Susan, Katrina and then Fiona wanted to come in on this. Susan.
Well, the thing is, when he's saying about where they're going to, about the sites, I mean, we were getting decanted because our site was getting upgrade. And we tried to get a decant site beside the housing scheme. I mean, the whole housing scheme was up in arms about this. And it ended up that Perth Cross Council had no backup whatsoever for where to put any of us. And the councillor, when they come to the planning permission for this decant site, he come up after they turned it down and he says, look, after the election, if you apply again, you'll get it. I mean, so there's a lot comes into it. It's not just the town, it's the councillors as well. It was doing that planning permission because they come up to report the cabin in their site, and we were all there, Fiona and the whole lot is. And he says, now, if you reapply after, it was the 3rd of May election, if you reapply, he says, you'll get planning permission. But the whole scheme was up in an uproar because, so he wasn't going to, like, jeopardise his votes for him this housing scheme. So that's a problem as well.
Katrina and then Fiona.
I agree with Georgia that the people that make these sites hasn't got a clue. They really don't. To me, I stay in a site in Dalkeith, and when you drive into it, it's actually like a cattle pen where, you know what I mean, we've got a fence round us and all of us lights, and we've got these iron gates like cattle pens. All right, they're doing the site up in the summertime, they're upgrading bits and pieces into it. But that site's been there now for years, long before my time, I think. But so I mean, the council don't, as Georgia says, that nobody actually listens to travellers face to face. They always look down on them. They'll never be treated as an equal, no matter if they stay in a house. If they stay in a castle, I don't think they'll be treated any better than they've been treated for years. So, do you know what I mean? As Georgia said, if people would just sit down, as we're doing today, and hear weird views, do you know what I mean? Maybe things will be better and sites will be better and our life would be better. But my personal opinion, I don't think it'll ever change for travellers. That is my opinion.
Fiona and then Edith and then Lizzie, I'll bring you back in. Fiona.
I started attending meetings with the council about 12 years ago, and at that time being we were talking about getting transit sites, but nothing ever happened. And I think that that's because there's never any time limits put on things, so it just goes on and on and on. But what I've seen over the years is every time there's a review or something at the Scottish Parliament or at the Scottish Executive involving gypsy travellers, the council will invite travellers in, get your opinion, put something in writing, but once all the reviews is over, it just kind of fizzles out, it goes nowhere. And at the end of the day, they didn't really listen to the travellers. You'll sit in their meetings, give your opinion, but the council goes away and does what they want to do anyway. And that's how, I mean, a fortune has been spent on double dykes, but the chalets there are not up to standard. Got problem with installation, heating, mould, condensation. The sites run down. It could be a lot better managed if they just listen to Gypsy Traveller community and get it right the first time.
Edith and then Lizzie.
Yeah, to go back to this gentleman here where he asked where opinion where like sites should be built and, you know, give their ideas. Out in the open, you know, where the people know where it is, how it is, and obviously get the locals' opinion as well on how and where. But I mean, just for the sites to be where they're put is disgraceful. You know, in my one, and again on her point, and she's in Double Dykes, and she said her Charlie's is not up to standard. I mean, my cousin stays there, as you know, and I visit it. And when I walk in, it's like, oh my God, you know, this is a palace compared to where I am. I mean, like, you say, where do you want to build a site? Well, I've talked to, like, we're councillors up there, and we're asking for an upgrade. No, we're not asking for, like, a whole brand new sort of site village to be built, but just make the one we've got better. You know, like maybe underground plumbing or just normal stuff. And we can't get anywhere.
So can I just check? I mean, although the location's not perfect from your point of view, you'd rather have an upgrade than move to a better site.
Well, I mean, if they could make a better site, that would be...
And why do you think the site is where it is? Is that because there's been resistance before?
Loch Gilphead site, Dunholligan site, I don't know if my history is right, but I think it's one of the first ever to be opened in Scotland. Okay. So it dates back to about late 70s, 78, 79. And about 20 odd years ago, the one I'm in was rebuilt because the one down in the hollow was just like the porter cabins, you know, like you would get on the roadside for the workmen. So they did the upgrade then, which is the way the site is now, but that is, in comparison to any other site, still, it's way dated, you know, and it's unlevel, the drainage is ridiculous, and it really does need something done. But again, you speak and you ask, and minor repairs is fine. I mean, through ACA, you phone if if your hot water stops working, they're out there straight away. If you've got something broken, they'll come and fix it in the unit. For the minor repairs, they're quite good, they're quite efficient, they're quite fast. But for the complete overhaul state of the site, it just doesn't go anywhere.
Lizzie and then Fiona, and then I want to move on because we've got a number of questions we still want to cover with you. Lizzie.
Going back to the question the man asked about the sites and where they should be built, and mere sites or transit sites and all that getting built. Well, and the most important thing that we're going on about is for travellers to have more an input. Well, I wish that was the case 20 years ago, because I feel as though I was forced into a house because there weren't anywhere for me to go, because the simple reason I was on a site and I couldn't even get registered with a disabled son to go and to a doctor's on the site. So it was basically to get his proper health care, like I says in the beginning, I was forced into a house, into a complete stranger surroundings, the lack of support from my family that I could have had and whatever. And being in a house, now I'm coming 19 years off and on. We've been in the house. I've travelled with my camper and the trailer up and down in the summertime, a few weeks here and there. But I really miss the closeness of the community that I had because I was forced in, and my own health deteriorated. Do you know what I mean? Because, and this is what a survey made, that because travellers has been forced into houses, right, maybe for different personal circumstances or reasons, the travellers that's moving into houses, they've got a poorer health rate and suffer different depression, anxiety, all these different elements since they're moved into a house because there's nowhere for them to stay. Do you know what I mean? So I just like to say that. So it's very important for travellers to get the input and where the sites is built and how they're built, or even to upgrade them. If you're on a site, sure to God, if they've got them, make sure they're half decent for the folk to live in them.
Fiona.
Living on Double Dykes, a lot of travellers see Double Dykes and they think that Double Dykes is a good, well-run, managed site and with good facilities on it, but that's not the case. And I wouldn't want to see that someone would go away and say, I want what's on Double Dykes, because I think Double Dykes is a good place to look and say, this is the kind of things that shouldn't have happened. Because we still have all the same problems that we had when we started off fighting for the upgrading, all the same high electricity costs, problems with condensation, insulation, all that problem still exists.
Thanks for that. I want to move on now to Marco, who wants to talk about the media, and then John Mason, who wants to talk about working patterns. Marco.
Generally speaking, with regard to local newspapers, national newspapers, the TV, do you think gypsy travellers get a fair deal?
Is that a collective no?
I look forward to seeing how that's recorded on the official report.
Can I just say in regards to that, I'm a Christian. I was actually attending a Christian convention in Essex last year, and the media had a field day. But there was no reports of crime in the village, etc., etc. But there was one write-up where an elderly resident had said that, yes, she found the travellers were driving really slowly through her village, and I thought, oh, this is promising, you know. But they were obviously just sizing it up, was the second remark. So I thought, well, that was really nice, you know, going really slow, respecting the community, etc. But then the second remark just took it away.
Tina?
I've read in the paper 1,000 articles about travellers, and I'd love to read something nice about them for once. I've never actually read any good comments about what travellers is meant to have done or what they're doing. It's always bad press they get, always.
Do you...
Sorry, Marco. Susan.
We do, I'm one of the trainers with Michelle. We do Equal-Opps. So we've got a board with all the press clippings. I mean, if any is want to see anything with press, just look at that board and you'll find out about how negative the press is to the Gypsy travellers.
Iona wanted to come in and then I'll come back to you, Marco. Iona.
Well, with Article 12 in Scotland, we've been doing media audits with doing positive and negative images and everything coming through the press. And there's actually proof shown that when travellers come on into the community, crime and for police records and stuff, that it doesn't change. It doesn't get a bigger risk or anything like that. It doesn't change because travellers is in the community. And well, we've been doing all the media audits and all about the positive images and negative comments and stuff on them as well.
Thanks for that, Marco. And then I'll bring you in, Lizzie.
When you've got issues like planning permission or, you know, decant sites and people that potentially live nearby having views on it, clearly local newspapers are really important for how news is spread to the community. Do you think local newspapers make any attempt to get in touch with Gypsy travellers from sites or potential sites, or do you find that they're only reporting the views of the authorities or the settled community?
Lizzie.
Sorry.
Can I bring in Lizzie and then I'll come to Iona and then Susan?
Well, like the lassies are saying, it's all negative. But it's not just newspapers. I was watching a thing that come down with me, and the contestants in it was into it. They were like mocking like the travellers. Like one was playing the part of a gypsy, oh, this is it, we should just go. Now that's exactly the words. It says, oh, I seen the gypsies, why don't we try some outside cooking? Because like years ago, that would have been my mother's make. She was outside cooking in an outside fire. And these comments. And then you've got the programmes at everybody assumes big fat gypsy wedding girls. They assume that we're like that. So it's kind of a bad impression for us. So it's not just newspaper things, and then no mention name, but I even heard a song last night, and the Wayne had took it, and it's settling laddies, country laddies, mocking, singing, like travellers meant to me making fun of them. So it can be in a variety of different ways. That's my point, to get the negatives over. So it's not just newspapers.
Iona, and then I'll bring in Susan.
Many a times into camps and things, press has come down to us wanting to ask their points on things, and it doesn't matter what we say. Or if they've come down and the place is clean and there's no rubbish lying about, it doesn't matter what happens. It still comes back with negative comments. Things get twisted. You can think you've done something really well, speaking to them and letting them see everything, and seeing that the camp's kept clean and everything, and then next day you look at the newspaper and it's, oh, there was rubbish here and rubbish there, and they use old pictures, which has happened for Aberdeen a lot, and we've been reporting that, and it's old pictures for old camps, and they're using that on new articles in the paper, and on like media, news, internet, everything, all like that.
Susan, and then Fiona and Edith.
When one time when we were looking for the upgrade in the site, me and Fiona decided to give an interview to a newspaper. I mean, they actually turned everything that we said, they turned it backwards to what we said. And then the thing was, they started going on about people that wasn't working, people that wasn't paying tax. I mean, my whole family works. And my father's never got benefit in his life, his actual life. And yet, they started going on about people, travellers, no paying tax and getting this money and everything. Just same in the radio, no longer were they were going on about people, travellers, no paying tax. I mean, if it had come to me, I could have got all my family's tax and showed them it, if they had come to me. But that's what happens. If we talk to the papers or anything, they just turn it around to suit themselves. They couldn't get nothing down at my bay to take, and what they actually took, a wee dog about that size, sitting on the curb. I mean, they couldn't get nothing else to take, so they took this 40, a wee dog sitting on the curb.
Fiona, excuse me, sorry, Fiona and then Edith.
It's just the same thing that Susan was saying. TV cameras turned up on Double Dykes, and we were given an interview to TV camera, but there was a news reporter there from another newspaper, and he went and printed a whole load of rubbish in a newspaper, and I was a year taking a complaint, and that was the Daily Mail. And at the end of it, we did prove that what they said was a load of rubbish, but they gave an apology on their website, but they didn't print anything in the paper.
Edith.
Yeah, I'd just like to work on Iona's point about the press. It's been six years since I've been up. Last time I moved up to Aberdeen, and it was just on a camp. And there was pictures of my caravan, my children, and my partners, and us all standing at an open side fire, which we weren't up, and we didn't take our work truck with us because we were only going up for a week to be beside family and take the kiddos to Cadonas. And went into Asda's, and there we were, front page in the local paper of the fire. And I thought, but there was nobody there last night. They took the photographs through the hedge and put it, and associated that picture with a different campsite at the time that there were some dumping trees, and totally put them together. And it, I've got it at Asda's and I was embarrassed, so just to go in the Aberdeen Press, yeah, they did that with me about 6 years ago.
Siobhan, did you have a supplementary? And then I'll come back to Marco and I'll bring you in, Georgia, as well.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, it was something we've heard in evidence, and I must stress it wasn't evidence and not my opinion. But people from particularly community councils were saying that some of the negative press and negative connotations with the Gypsy Traveller community is because of the lack of engagement on the Gypsy Traveller community's part with the settled community. I mean, what are your views on that, and do you think that then that leads to the negative media reports that happen?
Georgia, did you want to come in and then Lizzie?
Well, I was just going back to the media I want to start with. Now, media will do exactly what they intend to do, and they will sell their stories. They don't care who gets penalised in the process of that. I have seen articles in the paper where the media has complained about travellers using unofficial stopping grounds, how much it's cost the local authority for it to clean up this ground after the travellers have left. Now, if there was maybe bins put in or whatever else, there wouldn't be any mess. But that is the media putting the negativity straight into that community, so they're up in arms and saying it's our tax money that's allowing these travellers to stay here. It's costing us every time we move in. They move in. Now, that is not necessarily the case, because we do pay council tax. A lot of people in the settled community don't even know that for wherever we stay. And also, I have been on unofficial sites where people from a settled community have came in and they've dumped their rubbish, and I'm talking about 3-piece suites, divans, fridges. The newspaper media has came in and took pictures of this, then put it into their newspapers, while all the time I'm saying to council officials, I live in a caravan. I do not have a three-piece suite coming out of it. So, I mean, common sense just goes way over the head here. You know, and I've had council officials threatening to fine me for dumping a three-piece suite, you know. So, sorry, I've lost the last question. Sorry.
It's fine. If you remember, we'll come back to you. Lizzie.
I was just going to comment. Years ago, me and my two bairns, and I was expecting my youngest son, and my trailer went in. We were actually in the trailer when it went over. Severe wind. And obviously, praise the Lord for his kindness, my bairns came out. I wasn't bothered about the materialistic, the value of the trailer or what was the contents. But they wouldn't allow ambulance or fire brigades or anybody to attend to my aid. But the following morning, wow, I was like a celebrity. Well, these folk coming up, how the press got, I don't know. But they came and they took rakes of photos of the damage and everything. And they were wanting to interview me, but I'm lying in a hospital with 2 wounds. So obviously that couldn't take place. But they took all the damage that, obviously, it was like a residential, girls. It was just a big residential thing, comfortable for the winter time for me and my bairns. And they had all these pictures. But they even took the fence, because the trailer, I was in the end pitch, so the trailer went down like 2 fields down the banking, and on its process of going down, it damaged all the pitch, the metal fence that thing was surround you for each individual pitch. And I was quite thingied, because after obviously I got myself pulled together and they put me into the homeless, because everything I was destroyed belonged to me, like I says. But I think that's because the folk recognised, because when they did come to give an interview to me, because I took them, because the council had built me for the damage the trailer had done on its way out of the pitch. Do you know what I mean? So I just wanted to know, maybe this is why, because I've had, in 19 years, I've had 11 houses in 3 different districts for the councils, different accommodations. Now that's quite a lot of houses to go through in 19 years. So maybe it's because people seen my face, do you know what I mean, in the paper, and maybe because a lot of time it was through discrimination, prejudice, that I've had to move to another house. Do you know what I mean? So I'm still travelling, girls, but I'm just staying at the houses and going to different districts. Do you know what I mean? So maybe that's why I'm quite against the press. And there were nothing saying, oh, a miracle, the woman's walked out it, the bairns has come out it. Do you know what I mean? They never says nothing nice about that aspect. It was just, oh, look at the mess, look at the money it's going to cost to repair that. That somebody else could get on the side.
Charlene and then Fiona, and then I'll come back to you, Marco. Okay.
I was just going to say what you had said about the settled community. Well, I've been in Oban for 14 years. My mum and dad's been on a site for 14 years. I do think it's got a lot to do with settled community, I really do, because although travellers do have to have somewhere to stay, but I mean, when there's councils, there's the local people going nipping the councillors' heads, saying, oh, we don't want them here, we don't want them here, put them further away, you know, which is mostly always the case. But the 14 years that I've been in Oban, I stayed on the site and then I moved into a house, and now I'm back on the site. I've got to know the locals round about. I think it was moving into the house, I've got to know the locals round about. So now, when we first moved there, it was like when you move to a new place first time, locals they're kind of, they hound you like that, you know what I mean, what you're doing here, go back to where you've come from, you get all that. But now they're like, oh, it's the travellers that stay out in Benderloch, they don't bother, you know. I do think it's got a lot to do with settled community.
Yeah. Fiona?
When Double Dykes first opened, there was a lot of complaints against the caravan site going there, even though it was a traditional camping ground. But since it's been open in the last 30 years, there have been very little complaints against the site, and we have found that we actually get support from the people in housing, because there was a 1,300 housing plan in the fields around the site, and the travellers in the caravan site and the people in the small village or Rothenfield got together to make objections. So when we need to we can get together and quite happily talk with the people in housing. And I've offered Perthacross Council that if they go to plan to build other sites or even temporary sites, that I'm quite happy, and some travellers are quite happy to go and speak to local councils and local communities where their sites are being built, just to break down some of the barriers. Because I think that most people get their opinion for travellers from the newspapers, which is negative, and it's hearing from real travellers that makes a big difference.
That Fiona, I'll come back to Marco.
Yeah, just on that, do you find that has changed the local press perception of the site as well?
Where local press is not too bad. It's ones like the Sun and the Daily Mail. We had problems recently with the Sun. They kind of tar and feather all travellers the same. But our local, the Courier and the PA is not too bad when it comes to travellers, unless it's an authorised encampment. Then they can get a wee bit up in arms.
Iona and then Georgia.
We have been doing awareness raising workshops in schools. We've done like Aberdeen, we've done Edinburgh, and we plan in Larkhall, and we're planning to take it further. And I think it should be like that should be something that everybody, they should happen a lot more, and like community halls and things as well. Just wee workshops every now and again to let everybody know what's going on, so everybody can build bridges and can speak about things.
Thanks, Georgia.
I think travellers being more involved with the settled community. I think because there's been so much discrimination went on through the generations of travellers. I mean, even today as we sit here, there is still discrimination going on. It's still very real and it's happening. And I think until we can break down them barriers, on both sides, settled community and travellers, I don't think, there's no comfort zone there at the moment. Until the barriers is took down and the trust is built up. And trust is generated through what Iona's saying, through seminars, through awareness training days, services that we do offer. But the people we need to reach with these services, because it's only voluntarily attend, are the people that don't attend. So I think we have to tackle the discrimination and the racism first, and certainly the media has to play a more positive effect in that, maybe to make up for the years of negativity, you know.
It's been a long, long time, Georgia. Long, long time.
Well, Mary, it took a long time to get here and we're here today, so.
Michelle and then Edith. Michelle Lloyd, sorry.
Just to echo what others have said about, there are examples of good practice where gypsy travellers themselves are going into communities, trying to break down barriers, doing awareness raising training. And that needs to be, in my opinion, invested in much more. It needs to be rolled out across the country, not just in the one or two areas where there are small NGOs working with gypsies and travellers. I've been astonished as I've read the evidence for this inquiry about the number of community councils and local authorities who think they know best and have very strong views. They know where your site should be built and they have no hesitation in giving their opinion. Very often those are people that have never spoken to a gypsy traveller before, let alone actually lived on a caravan site or in a trailer. And I've also heard in the past people have said that the community planning partnerships are potentially a way forward. And whilst I don't think there's many people that would disagree with getting people around a table, working in partnership, etc., from what I see at the moment and from what I hear today and on other occasions, if gypsy travellers were to get involved in the community planning partnership as a way forward, it wouldn't be a level playing field. And until there's actually people can come to the table with the knowledge and with the rights and with the free from discrimination and racism, then I don't see that as a way forward. There needs to be much more groundwork done.
Thanks for that. Edith?
Going back to the sort of like the comment you made about the communication with the locals and the press, in Lochgelby you've got the Argyll Advertiser, and they don't ever, like, we don't get bad press, but we don't get any recognition of even being there. And as for getting on with the locals and communication, I mean, I find that, well, all last year I was in college through doing a employability and communications course, and I find that the more intelligent people that you speak to and deal with seem to understand, and they are all for your thoughts and your, you know, your opinions on where you live, and you know, you don't get this racist thing from them, which is local sort of council or ACA, or they just get up in the morning, they do their job, and they don't want no problems or complications on that day of that job, you know. So, and each one, an everyday worker can't really do anything about the state or one site's in, you know. But they've never sort of gave you them, well, why don't you go to the press, or why don't you know, and I think that was mentioned a couple of times, but it's never came about.
Thanks for that, Edith. I've got Lizzie and Georgia, and then I'll need to move on because we've got 3 more things that we wanted to cover with you. So,
It's
Lizzie.
just short. All I was going to say is, because of the media maybe putting my face, and then obviously when my son was born, my youngest son, he was like a celebrity because he brought the bells in. So obviously I'm standing there with face and proud as punch, my laddie. So the folk knew me, because. But the thing is, in the past, over the years, in the different houses in the different districts I've had to move to, I've actually denied that I'm a traveller. And I've parked my motor because it's not, because the thing when I needed a van, I'm not like a lady. I had a car as a luxury, but I had to have a van so that I used it for my work. So I used to have to park. I suffered that much for the country people, knowing my face and recognise me, that I would park my motor somewhere else and walk up to the house, because I was just, because you suffered so much thing for them, I didn't want the folk to ken, because I've had motors in the past vandalised outside my place, so I decided, no, it's easier now, I'll not mention them. So it was like military attrition in the morning, get the wains out, put them at school, and then go all the way round to go and pick my motor up. Do you know what I mean? And I left it in a kind of posh pit, so I kent it would be alright. Do you know what I mean? So, at the end of the day. But that's what it was like. So sometimes, and I'm proud of my culture, and I'm proud of being a traveller, and it's only by attending different things and doing that I'm able to speak, and I'm here today. Do you know what I mean? And say things like that. So.
Thanks, Lizzie. Georgia.
I think going back to community partnership, now I've lived on sites for years and I've been in houses as well. Now, I have been verbally discriminated against by a site warden and a council official. Now, if we don't target the very people that's meant to be there running our sites, how can we expect to come within the community? Now, that is certainly not giving out any trust whatsoever for us. I'm not then passing my trust on to my children and saying, do you know, you'll be okay in the local school, because they're actually standing watching the caretaker calling me a dirty tank. Do you know, if that's acceptable within the actual council body itself, where can we move on and gain any trust within local communities?
John Mason wants to ask about working patterns, and then Siobhan wants to talk about tenancy agreements with you. John.
Okay, thanks, convener. Yeah, I mean, we've had a bit of mention, you know, talking especially about sites, both permanent sites and stopping sites, that, you know, generations have gone to one place and it's been a traditional stopping place and so on. I mean, I'm just wondering how much things are changing in that. I mean, as I understand, in the past a lot of work would have been more agricultural, and now a lot of work is maybe more around the towns and things like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because when we were up in Aberdeen, that was the kind of suggestion we're getting, that Aberdeen, because of the money and so on, is attracting a lot of travellers, not just from Scotland but elsewhere, which suggests that, you know, now we need more sites. Maybe they didn't used to need them in Aberdeen, but they need more in that area now. So is there a kind of change going on?
Could I just say that within the settled community, anybody that wants to work and wants to earn a decent living, sometimes they find they have to move as well. So I don't think it's any different. Obviously, you've got people that maybe just doesn't want to work in the world, as in any minority. But if a person wants to progress and wants to go forward in life, they will go where the work is, regardless of what occupation they've got. If the work is there, they will follow wherever their work is. I mean, there's people here that actually emigrate and go abroad for to make a better quality of life. And although travelling communities will move around for work, is that not better that rather than the government substantiating them or keeping them?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And so would you say that's changed over time, you know, compared to, say, 25 years ago? Is the work in a different place now?
Well, I think things change. We all move with the times. I mean, my children's childhood was a lot different from mine. My grandfather couldn't read or write his own name, but could still keep financially above board, could still look after his family and work. That worked then. It doesn't mean to say it would work now. So I think it's just maybe more people are getting more qualities, more professional, more sort of grades, O-levels. Maybe they're looking forward to and wanting to go into college. Maybe it's getting a wee bit more accessible, that they can learn these trades properly with certificates. So, I mean, I think it just goes in each individual person as to how much they want to do or how much they want to know in life.
Edith and then Lizzie.
Yeah, going to John Mason about, like, things that has changed now, and a lot of travellers don't move, like, you know, for the agricultural work, but a lot of travellers now is in proper jobs. I know on the site I'm on, you know, they've got one guy who's working with the council, although he's empties bins, but he's still with the council. And another one's a mechanic, and pay rent, you know, and the rates, and they do it from Dunholligan because they don't want to, you know, be in a house. But Dunholligan is left just to ruin, you know, it's never upgraded. And a lot of people now, they'll move about, and as the other lady said, you know, a lot more travellers and young girls now, it's more accessible for them to get into college and get certificates and find proper jobs. But I find you'll find a lot of that young gypsy teenagers is willing to do it from the caravan site and be proud to do it from the site, where sometimes in local communities, you know, if you're coming from this site, then you maybe won't get that job. So they'll move on to maybe another site, you know. So in work terms, it has changed over the years. But I find that the travellers is changing with it, because some places is making it more accessible for them for learning and schooling, and to get proper certificates and for, you know, like proper jobs, which is good.
Lizzie and then Charlie.
Well, the lassies really covered it because it was similar to what I was going to say, but like obviously years ago, a lot of the communities, especially in Perth and Kinross, they relied on the gypsy traveller communities to work the land or other firms or whatever. But the lassies already covered it. It's the young ones are wanting more education and more to go out there and work. I've done it myself, so do you know what I mean? And I think it's a good thing for them. So maybe this is one way of helping break down the barriers so that settlers and travellers can work together.
Charlene?
Can I just say, going back to what Edith was saying, working from the site, I know from personal experience, I mean, I've got family members, my wee sister, for instance, who's sitting here, she's filled out applications for jobs and lied about her address. And then found out, like, they found out her address and, no, you're not suitable, you know, just finding out an address, which I think is ridiculous.
Thanks for that, Charlene. Georgia?
I would also like to say, I have one of my daughters here with me today. She's 15. She's only had 2 weeks secondary education. The reason for that being is going back to the basic thing, discrimination. Discrimination, bullying, verbal and physical abuse happened to my child. Now, as in work, my child has no qualifications whatsoever. She's going to be 16 in June. How can my child possibly go and try and experience and fill out application forms and go for a job when she's got no trust for the community that she wants to live in and work beside? And plus, through the experiences that she's had, the system has failed her for her education. Something that the settled community takes for granted. We don't take educating our children for granted. When our children are in school, and most schooling comes through primary schooling, When they're in school, they don't get sickies and they don't get days off. They attend school, and when they're not in school, they're not in school. But we do value our children's education much more because we insist on it and we fight for to get them educated. But yet we are fighting and our children are still going to school in unsafe conditions. I will not ever put my child to school where she's going to be threatened.
That was certainly one of the things we heard when we were in Aberdeen. The level of bullying increases when traveller children go into secondary education. So, and there are less and less travellers going into secondary schools because of that level of bullying. Fiona, and then I want to move on because we've got 2 more things we want to cover.
I'm a carer just now, but I believe if you live on a Gypsy Traveller caravan site, it can be very hard to get a job. I applied for the job as the site manager when it came up for the caravan site that we live on, and I wasn't even given an interview. I wasn't allowed to go forward for the interview, but I did go on to provide the site manager with Gypsy Traveller awareness training to help him as his job as a site manager. So I provided the person who got the job with the training to help him with the job, but I didn't qualify for the interview.
John, is there anything else you wanted to ask before I move on?
I think that's been helpful,
Right,
thanks.
that's
Yeah, that's great.
Siobhan wanted to ask about tenancy agreements, and then I'm going to bring in Alex Johnson. The last subject we wanted to cover was access to services. Siobhan.
Thank you. Again, in evidence, we've heard about tenancy agreements and what they should be and who draws them up. So I really wanted your opinions on this because the first report in 2001 by the committee suggested a tenancy agreement for all of Scotland, so it didn't matter what site you go to, you'll still have the same rights and responsibilities, and that would work both ways. So your opinions on what a tenancy agreement should look like, who should be involved in drawing them up, should it be across Scotland or should it be for individual sites, and should, in your opinion, should it be from the Scottish Government or should it be local authorities in drawing them up, obviously with your input?
Fiona.
We spent years trying to get the council to, because our tenancy agreement was about 2 pages and it didn't say very much, and so we campaigned the council to change the tenancy agreement to very similar to the Scottish Short Secure Tenancy Agreement. Well, ours is similar to that one. It has just about everything the same. But last year, I took a complaint to the Ombudsman because I couldn't get the council to hold up most of what was in the tenancy agreement. But the Ombudsman came back and says that the council has a discretion that they didn't have to implement the conditions it set out in the tenancy agreement. Now, I thought that a tenancy agreement was legal and binding between the tenant and the council. But it seems that the council has a discretion not to act on any part of the tenancy agreement. It's not that the Ombudsman disagreed that the council was upholding it. They just say that the council doesn't need to because they have this discretion. I can't understand either.
I once tried to read over a tenancy agreement, I should say, for Teelan site in Dundee. It did say you will keep your caravan mobile at all times. But previous to this, it said that this was a permanent site. So there was a permanent site, but keeping your caravan mobile at all times. Also, what I find is if I purchase something out of a shop and it's faulty and I return it, when they ask for the postcode, it actually comes up on the computer and the person behind the counter doesn't know how to respond because it comes up Gypsy Travellers person site. And they don't know how to respond to you because they don't want to insult you in case you're not a Gypsy Traveller. And they don't want to insult you because you might be a Gypsy Traveller. I mean, it does not come up for any council areas or rebot areas. This is where the ethnic minority groups stay or reside. So why should it be any different for us in sites? And also, we can't go and hire a DVD through the site address, although on your tenancy agreement it's a permanent address.
Lizzie.
Well, that's one of the things that angers me because at the end of the day, that's the way I look at it. If I'd been able to get access to a doctor's and still, because I was on the site, because like they're saying, you've got the name of travelling site on your address and your postcode and everything. And if I'd have got proper access to the doctors and whatever I needed, I wouldn't have been in a house. Do you know what I mean? I'd have been able to stay out in the trailer among men. But at the end of the day, the thing is, when I did go to register with the doctors, the discrimination, because they turned around and says to me, they says, look, sorry, we don't take your kind of folk. But if you go down that street, George Street, I don't know exactly the name of the street, but it says if you go down George Street or whatever, they take your kind on. Now, that's the turn around and says to me. And when I was out years ago, when I was staying out at Lone Head, can't mind it. You would mind, Katrina, first time I took the plunge, wee trailer, myself, single parent. Anyway, but I was staying in this wee trailer and into this lay-by and out at Lone Head. And we've been expecting, and at my other bairn, it was like, yeah, I had two buses to catch, because I couldn't afford a motor at the time, because I was just getting on my feet. So, obviously, going with two other wee ones, well, thank God Katrina was there, she dragged in and watched the other wee one, but it was quite a trek to take two wee young wens and plus being heavy expecting up into the hospitals, because you couldn't get registered with a doctor. It was only like 5-10 minutes away. And it's the same with dentists. It just doesn't go with doctors or anything like that. It could be any kind of health service. And a lot of the time we use the A&E emergency departments, but even now you have to get referred to go there. So they'll not look at you. If you go in with an emergency, you still have to be referred for a doctor to get assessed at the hospitals now.
Katrina?
I've stayed in areas where not only been refused treatment by doctors, actually been refused services in shops, being put out of shops. Why? Do you know what I mean? You go into a shop, you're clean, you're respectable. My money's the same as everybody else's, but I've been put out of shops, no travellers allowed. And I've been refused treatment at doctors because I'm a traveller, so it is hard. Do you know what I mean?
Does anyone else want to come in on the subject of tenancy agreements? Because we are keen to get your views on what should be in a tenancy agreement, whether or not you think they're a good thing. Fiona, and then Susan, and then Katrina. Dennis, did you have a supplementary? No? No, okay. Fiona?
I think that when you live on a mixed caravan site, when there's different gypsy families living on the site, you do need a tenancy agreement, because you do need rules and regulations for the site so everyone knows where they stand. But the way our site is run is the council can come and tell you to do one thing today and a different thing tomorrow, and your neighbour next door, they could ask them to do something differently. Where if you have a tenancy agreement, then everyone knows where they stand. But the way the caravan site's run just now, it's whether the council feels like doing it that day or not, that's what causes a lot of the problems and some of the antisocial behaviour in the caravan site, is because no one kens what they should and shouldn't be doing on the site. So you do need a tenancy agreement with rules. But I was wanting to ask a question about the discretion. Is this what they can do? Is there a discretion over a tenancy agreement?
My understanding, I'm not an expert, is if you break an agreement then they can use, but not just because they feel like it. So, I mean, we can look into that. I think one of the points that you do make is you talk about what happens on the site, and if you knew the rules, obviously you wouldn't break them. What we're keen to get, I think, as well, is the opposite side. So what is the council's responsibility or the housing association's responsibility as well, and that agreement being both parts. So we're keen to know what you would want from the councils and your input rather than what they expect of you.
Susan, and then Katrina and Edith, and then Dennis has a supplementary. Susan.
I don't think, when it comes to the tenants' agreement, on their side anyway, the council seem to pick what they want to do. But when we had a problem in the site with antisocial behaviour, didn't we? But the council, it was on the tenancy agreement, but they wouldn't do nothing about that. So I think the council just picks things out of the tenant association to suit themselves. They sort of turn it around so it benefits them instead of the people that's actually on the site.
Dina?
On the tenancy agreement, there's a lot of rules and regulations what you should and you shouldn't do, but one I don't agree with personally. and most probably a lot of the mothers here will agree with me. They say you're allowed 2 caravans. Now, there's a lot of travellers, and they've all got big families. And for instance, myself, I've got a daughter and son at home still, and I'm only allowed 2 caravans yet. My daughter's 21, my son's 17. They can't share a caravan. Do you know what I mean? If I was staying in a house, they'd each have a room. So I think on the site there should be rules that, you know, if you've got mixed families, well, we'll all have a lot of travellers, got boys and girls, and you can't share the same caravan. You know what I mean? They're teenagers, they need their own privacy. So I think that's one of the rules that should be overlooked, that should be, do you know what I mean?
Thanks for that. Edith?
Yeah, well, last time my agreement, tenancy agreement, is about 2 pages, and it's like, I think it's like a tick in the box type thing. Ask permission if you want to have a dog. Ask permission if you want to have overnight visitors. Obviously, you will be responsible for your visitors, so I think that would probably cover antisocial behaviour as well, and so on and so on. But it's just basically all about what you can't do, and you sign it. And then lately they've come up with a form that I got from ACA, and it was a 2-page form again. And basically it's asking you to tell them everything about your neighbours, if they have a fight, if they have an argument, when it was, what time it was, or, you know, stuff like that. I've still got it. I could find it somewhere. And I thought, what is that? Basically, it's like an informant type form. You know, any incidents that may occur, write them down, write the time, who it was. Just like, that's what it seemed like. It seemed like, you know, like an informant form. That
did everyone get
such and such did this at such and such a time, on such and such a day. And I still have it. I'll
Was that recently issued to you?
Yeah, and I think my other daughter over there, Kirsty, she came and she got a pitch last year, and I think she got one as well.
Right.
So she'll probably have a look at her one. But I found it weird. But the tenancy agreement, I've been there quite a few years, so it's quite a few years since I got it, and it was only like a couple of pages. Just the usual as you get in sites is Katrina, and that will know it. And then you've got to ask permission if you want a dog. You've got to give them permission if you're having like people up for a weekend stay, and it's your responsibility for their behaviour at the time they're on site. Which, I mean, everybody, even people anywhere, would be responsible for the visitors if they're going to be rowdy. You can't do that. You're in my home, obviously. That would be standard procedure with anybody, but you don't need, like, say, your housing association or your site people telling you that. You know, I think like common sense would prevail on that one. So.
Thanks. Dennis, did you have a supplementary on this, and then I'll come back to Siobhan?
Very, very briefly. It was something that Georgia said that made me think. Form filling can be very complicated for a lot of people, and I'm just wondering if the tenancy agreements are written in a language and in a way that's fully understandable, and if not, what helps there to assist you complete tenancy agreements?
None.
None. I mean, basically, are they written in a way that it is fully understandable, and you know at the end of the day what the agreement is?
Lizzie?
Usually, a lot of the lasses that I know, if there's some of them going on sites or whatever, they come to me because it's kind of widespread with a lot of travellers where I am, that I do a lot of work with the settling folk. So they usually come to me if they need help, and I'm not a great scholar because I self-taught myself, and with a bit of help I did get to, but usually that's what it is. If you know somebody, like in your community, you'll go to them, or somebody that works within the community, you'll go to them and maybe get help to explain it. But sometimes it takes them to understand it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay. I'm going to come back to Siobhan because we want to ask about Gypsy Traveller Liaison Officers, and then Alex might have further questions to ask about access to services, and if we have time I'll come back to people that still want to speak. Siobhan?
It was just something that said earlier again, that you just sign your agreement because clearly then you want to live on the site, therefore you do it. So what interaction do you have with your Gypsy Traveller Liaison Officer that's provided by the council or whoever that may be? Do they help in that instance? Are they about the site? Do they come and engage with you, or do you have to seek them out? And also, I heard earlier, and it's in the report from Monday, I wasn't at the meeting, but someone called the people wardens, which clearly, as I was reading it back, I thought, for heaven's sake, do you know, a warden going about your home? Do you know what I think? Okay. Well, it's a bit more polite than that, I suppose. So, I'm frightened to ask this question. It's, what is your opinion of Gypsy Traveller Liaison Officers, and what can we set out to make that relationship better? What would make that relationship better?
Fiona and then Iona and Christine, can I ask that you keep your comments as brief as possible so we can get as many people in and move on to the next subject as well? Fiona.
Yeah, our Gypsy Traveller Liaison Officer is also our site manager, and I believe that man can't even litter on the site without getting permission from somewhere in the council. And I wouldn't go to him as a Gypsy Traveller Liaison Officer, because I believe the role of Gypsy Traveller Liaison Officer is to help and support and be a go-between between the council, but he's just another council employee. He keeps telling us that he's way down the line, and so he's got to ask permission for everyone else before he can do anything.
Iona.
It's just the same as what Fiona's saying. Everything you need comes from somewhere else. They need to get permission. And the liaison officer that we've got from up in like Aberdeen, they don't do nothing to help. We're out in camps, you're not getting bins, you're not getting toilets, you're not getting nothing that you need provided, what they're supposed to do. They're feeling intimidated coming into camps to speak to us, whereas we're feeling the same with them coming to their homes. So with that, it needs to be connections made and feel safe and trust for them to come into your home to speak for what you need, to get what you need from them to help each other.
Christine.
Yeah, gypsy route. To be the warden. Instead of getting people from every different council and get a gypsy route.
Edith and then Lizzie, and then I'll come back to Siobhan.
Yeah, well, we don't have a liaison officer, and with Fiona and Iona, I agree that like a liaison officer and a site warden should be two separate jobs, and as Fiona said, one should be to mediate between people. I mean, I only got here through Michelle and Lindsay today, and it was through their knowledge and their mediating with me that I got here, not through a site warden or a liaison officer, anything like that.
Okay. Lizzie.
My comment was, I think a traveller liaison officer, they shouldn't just be for the sites or the side of the roads or different camps. They should include that outreach with the travellers. It's in houses. Considering how many gypsy travellers had to move into houses now because of their circumstances, it should be further. I feel it should be open to all the gypsy traveller community for the folk to work with.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Alex, did you want to ask any more about access to services?
Yes, I wanted to focus in on a subject that's come up on a number of occasions during our conversation this morning, and that's access to services. And it could be broader, but basically I'm talking about education and health services. And when we were up at Clinterty on Monday beside Aberdeen, we actually got a good news story because what we were getting was that the local GP was very positive and engaged, and that although the site was some distance from the local primary school, there was good school bus services and that sort of thing. However, I've listened to people like Elizabeth Johnston, Georgia McGann, and I've heard some horror stories this morning. So I want to know what the general view is on these subjects, whether it is uniformly poor or whether it's patchy, and how important it is for these services to be available where a site is going to be continued or established.
Lizzie?
Well, me personally, obviously, I know I'm still angry with the fact that I've had to be forced into the house because I couldn't get doctors and all this. But there has been positives of being in the house, obviously, where I've managed to give my children, I think, in my opinion, quite a good education because they had the settled lifestyle. I've been able to assist going to schools and things. But that's only through myself being able to come to different meetings and getting involved with different things and to find out what's available for me. And I'm not fear to speak up. And sometimes I might not shut up either, but at the end of the day, my opinion is the sites and things has to be nearer that where gypsy travellers can get them. And if they get refused, where the gypsy travellers got the information, if they feel it is on the discrimination that they're being refused access to that, whatever public service it is, they should have the back knowledge and the information that they can take it forward and say, well, look, just because I'm staying on the site, I should be entitled to the same treatment. So it's to more information given to the gypsy travellers to make it easier. Do you know what I mean? To ask us to come to different things and meetings and to tell us what's available and to get more involved for sites or even if it's in the houses.
Yeah. Iona and then Georgia, and then I'll come back to you, Alex.
Well, in Aberdeen, we live on private land, and because of our address, we've been refused healthcare, dental, schools, everything. And there's 2 local doctors beside us, and we can't get them because of our address. We've got to go out to the next wee village, which is miles away, to get a doctor's. My younger sisters has got to travel where there's 3 schools round about us, and they've got to go away out past Clinterty to get the school, because there's a school out there that's really... They understand the travellers. When we travel, they don't mind. They give her work to take with us when we go away in the caravan. They understand that she goes away, and they don't treat her different. It's a really good school, and they understand things. But there's 3 schools next to us, and we've got to go that far out in the morning for her to get her education. And it's the same with dentists, doctors, and everything else. Because of our address, we get refused everything like that.
Georgia. And then Edith, did you want to come in as well? Yeah, okay. Georgia.
I think it comes back to discrimination again now. If the teachers themselves have no education on how to treat gypsy traveller children within their school unit, I think that will fall to the pupils. Now, I've had occasions when my child has been at school and she has been excluded from the middle ground table in the class. She has now the teacher excluded her. Therefore, when in the playground, the children then exclude her because they have been given the permission from the teacher. So I think anybody that works within the public body, be it council officials, be it police officers, be it teachers, anybody that works within the public body that is going to come in contact with gypsy travellers should attend seminar or awareness training days so that they have some background knowledge of what kind of people they're meeting, what qualities. I mean, I've had teachers. I have always enrolled my children as Scottish gypsy travellers within the school system. And I have had teachers bypassing that and actually taking my children out of their class and asking them all about their ethnic minority, all about their traditions. My children's put to school for to be educated by the teacher, not educate the teacher there. If the teacher wants to educate, they should come to these seminars and should ask face-to-face the parents, not the children, and then the bullying will not go down the ladder, so to speak.
Edith, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, well, I'd like to go on the education and the health system where I was. My 3 daughters has been schooled in Equal-Opportunity Primary. None of them attended the high school. And I would do the same. I would leave every summer and the school was okay. They gave me the workout, which kept them up. But as you could ask any of my daughters, although they weren't bullied or hit, they could never turn around and say they had a friend. So they just got through their school and that was it. And I drove my children to school every morning, so I didn't have the need to ask for a bus stop or a school bus. But in recent times, there's been quite a lot of children, and one count we had, 22, and Michelle can confirm this. And the ladies on the site didn't drive, and they couldn't get their children to school. So they asked the school if they could have a school bus up on site. And I think they had to fight for months for it because they had to put them on the main run bus, which took all the high school kids from Inverary and outlying villages into Lochgilpin. You're talking 4.5 and 5-year-olds just starting school at the bottom of a road where there's no bus stop and no pavement. So, and they were on it for a while, weren't they? and on the way home on a few occasions, they had passed the road because, as everybody knows, there's no indication, there's no sign letting anybody know that it's there, although the locals do know it's there. And the children's been dropped off at the recycle centre gate and told to run back and just run up the road. And it was then that the woman on site went to the education authorities and got help for to get the wee school bus. But they had some fighting to get it, you know, and it was.
It's quite a walk from that recycling centre back to the site. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Alex.
Just a couple of comments. One is that listening to what Iona was saying, knowing the geography of the area, I suspect that she was talking about accessing services at the same school and the same GP that we were actually getting the good stories about on Monday, which indicates to me that there's still a lot of bad stories around. Something which came up on Monday and I think has been reinforced for me today, and I can ask the guest to confirm that if necessary, is that regardless of how difficult things may be in terms of primary education, there is an absolutely critical problem in terms of inclusion in secondary education, which of course, because of current demands, is getting worse, not better. It becomes more important.
Yeah. Yeah. Michelle, did you want to come in on that?
Just to follow up off of Edith, the problem we had up at Dunholligan, it was a severe issue. You know what I mean? We're talking about the dangers, the risks, the safety of children. Now, we had to actually pull children out of education. We had to stand back and say, right, the kids aren't going, and refused to put them into education before we were provided actual transport to come up and pick the kids up and guarantee the kids would be brought back. Now, we also had a meeting regarding there's no bus stops. At night time, taxis won't come in Hooligan due to the condition of the roads, because there's so much potholes, it's like a game of dodgems. Now, I actually questioned a member from Acker on if we had to get to hospital in the evening if there was no transport on the site. What I got told back was dial 999. I says, now, if it's where some of the kids are sick, we need to get them up, get them checked. You can't lift the phone and dial 999. Do you know what I mean? It's not a great emergency, but it says, well, it's dial 999. So it's, I think it's just, in the whole, it's just a disgrace. We're arguing, we're having meetings, we're talking, but from Acker, it's all talk, talk, talk. There's no action at all coming from Acker.
Georgia.
I think, Alec, if I could come back to where you said you were having good reports earlier in the week, I really don't think they would have been from the travelling community. I think they would have probably been from the service providers themselves.
No, in fact, it was from the travelling community that we were getting that.
Well, it just shows you few and far between that there is some good
although I would
there.
say that I did make the comment earlier that on Monday we're by and large talking to men and today we're by and large talking to women, so that I do suspect there's a different attitude in these things.
Susan and Christine, and as I say, if you could maybe keep your comments brief and then I'll come back to Alec and then we'll need to unfortunately wind up.
You said about the access to schools. There's a small school about 100 yards, maybe 200 yards up from me. Now, when we lived there, when I went to primary school, we got into that school. I was actually in that school when it was an unauthorised encampment at the Double Dykes. And yet, a couple of years I was in it, and then all of a sudden they moved us out. So even though that school is we're catchment area, there are none of our kids allowed in that school. So it means that we've got to take our kids, we didn't get a bus or didn't get taxis, nothing. There always got to be somebody with a car for to take the younger ones to school. So even though all that years ago we got in there, into that school, they stopped taking travellers in, and so it must be about 45 years ago that they stopped taking travellers into that school, and there's never been a traveller in it since.
Christine?
It's just a thing with the high school. My daughter doesn't go to high school, but we do a programme with the high school, and we had an awful bother to get my oldest daughter to get a injection for the cancer thing. So if you could do something with that, because like a health visitor had her, like she was attending her since she was like born, and they couldn't give her an injection until I went through all this meetings and things. So if you could check up on that.
Thanks very much for that, Christine. Alex, is there anything else you wanted to ask?
I think we could go through this at greater length, but I think I've got a very clear picture of the view of access to services across Scotland.
Can I then, as there are no further questions, can I thank all our witnesses today for coming along? It's been really important to us as we've been doing this inquiry that we actually speak to the Gypsy Traveller community, and there has been a common thread that's gone through this whole inquiry, and your evidence this morning will certainly help us in writing up our report. So can I thank you all very much for coming along. And that concludes our formal meeting today. Our next meeting will take place on Thursday, the 21st of February, and will include oral evidence from the Minister for Public Health on where Gypsy travellers live. So thank you all very much.